Uh, let me, let me kiss you. 14 years old Emeka in school uniform whispered. 12-year-old Chisom's eyes widened. No, Emeka, I can't, she said, shaking her head. Why not? Emeka asked, his voice soft but insistent. It's just a kiss. Nobody will know. Please, Chisom. She looked into his eyes, and for a moment, her resolve wavered. She didn't want to disappoint him. Slowly, she nodded. Just one, she whispered. Emeka leaned in, pressing his lips against hers in a clumsy, inexperienced kiss. Chisom stood frozen, unsure of how to react. When he pulled away, he smiled at her, his confidence growing. The teen extended its tails and began to quick count several times. That wasn't so bad, was it? He asked. Chisom shook her head. Her face flushed. But before she could say anything, Emeka kissed her again. This time with more urgency. Chisom felt a strange mix of emotions, fear, excitement, confusion, all swelling inside her. It was a typical hot afternoon in Odo Primary School. The air was filled with the sound of children laughing, talking, and occasionally chasing one another around the compound. Among the chatter, Emeka sat in the corner of a wooden bench, his gaze fixed on the group of girls giggling a few steps away. Emeka was tall for his age, with a lean frame and a mischievous look that made him the center of attention among his peers. He had an air of confidence that the other boys envied and the girls admired. But today, his attention was fixed solely on Chisom, a petite, soft-spoken girl with round eyes and neatly plaited hair. She was seated among her friends, her voice barely audible as she laughed at something one of them had said. Emeka, why are you staring at Chisom like that? Asked Chike, his best friend, nudging him playfully. Nothing, Emeka replied, trying to sound nonchalant, but his eyes betrayed him. He couldn't help but admire Chisom, his girlfriend, though neither of them truly understood what being in a relationship meant. It was just something that made them feel special, a secret they shared, away from the teasing of their classmates. As the break bell rang, signaling the end of the first recess, the students began to scatter, some heading to the classroom, and others lingered under the tree. Emeka stood up and brushed the dust off his shorts. I'll be back, he said to Chike, before making his way toward the group of girls. Chisom, he called softly, his voice just loud enough for her to hear. She looked up, her brows furrowed in curiosity. Can I talk to you for a minute? Chisom hesitated, glancing at her friends, who were now giggling and whispering among themselves. Okay, she said finally, standing up and dusting her skirts. Emeka led her past the noisy classroom blocks towards the edge of the school compound, where the bushes grew thick and tall, forming a natural boundary. This area was forbidden for students. Where are we going? Chisom asked, a slight note of nervousness in her voice. Just here, Emeka replied, pointing to a small clearing in the bush. The trees formed a canopy over their head, creating a secluded spot that felt far away from the bustling schoolyard. As they reached the clearing, Emeka turned to her, his hands tucked into his pockets. "Come on, Chisom, hug me," he said, his voice low. Chisom blinked, unsure of how to respond. "Hug you? Why?" she asked, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. "Because I like you," Emeka said, smiling in a way he thought was charming. "And you said you like me too, Abi?" Chisom looked away, her heart pounding. She did like Emeka, but this felt different, strange. "I don't think we should be here," she muttered, taking a step back. "Chisom, there is nothing wrong with hugging," Emeka said, stepping closer. "It's just a hug. Don't you trust me?" Chisom hesitated. She did trust him, but her mother's stern warnings about boys echoed in her mind. Still, she didn't want to upset Emeka. "Okay, just a hug," she said finally, her voice barely audible. Emeka grinned and opened his arms. Chisom stepped forward hesitantly, wrapping her small arms around him in a brief, awkward embrace. But as she tried to pull away, Emeka hid on, his grip firm but not forceful. "You see, that wasn't bad," he said, looking down at her. "You are beautiful, Chisom." Chisom blushed, unsure of what to say. "Thank you," she mumbled, trying to pull away again. But Emeka leaned in closer, his face inches from hers. "Let me kiss you," he whispered. Chisom's eyes widened. "No, Emeka, I can't," she said, shaking her head. "Why not?" Emeka asked, his voice soft but insistent. "It's just a kiss. Nobody will know. Please, Chisom." She looked into his eyes, and for a moment her resolve wavered. She didn't want to disappoint him. Slowly she nodded. "Just one," she whispered. Emeka leaned in, pressing his lips against hers in a clumsy, inexperienced kiss. Chisom stood frozen, unsure of how to react. When he pulled away, he smiled at her, his confidence growing. "Ah, that wasn't so bad, was it?" he asked. Chisom shook her head, her face flushed. But before she could say anything, Emeka kissed her again, this time with more urgency. Chisom felt a strange mix of emotions, fear, excitement, confusion, all swelling inside her. The minutes that followed were blood. Emeka quickly gathered plantain leaves, putting them on the ground as Chisom's eyes darted around quickly. Emeka's hand moved awkwardly, and Chisom found herself giving in to his advances, unsure of how to stop him or if she even wanted to. It felt like an eternity, yet it was over in moments. Emeka had his way with her, and even as Chisom began to bleed, he quickly gave his handkerchief to clean up. Chisom was in pain, and they both sat on the ground in the bush for minutes while Chisom cried. "Come on, you're a big girl. Why are you crying?" asked Emeka, with a hand around her shoulder. But all what Chisom thought about was her mother. When they were done, Chisom pulled away, straightening her rumpled uniform and fixing the handkerchief in her pants to prevent the bleeding from being noticed. She avoided Emeka's gaze, her mind racing with questions and guilt. "We should go back," she said quietly, wiping her tears with the back of her palm. "Oh, okay," Emeka replied, sensing her discomfort. He didn't push her further, but a small part of him felt a strange sense of pride, as though he had achieved something important. As they made their way back to the school compound, the bell rang, signaling the end of break time. They walked in silence, The once playful atmosphere now heavy with unspoken words. Chisom slipped back into the classroom, joining her friends, who greeted her with teasing grins. "What took you so long?" one of them asked, nudging her playfully. "Nothing," Chisom replied quickly, her cheeks burning as she avoided their eyes. Emeka took his seat across the room, his expression neutral, as though nothing had happened. But something had happened, something that neither of them fully understood. It was a secret they would carry with them, one that would soon change their lives in ways they couldn't imagine. As the teacher walked in and began the lesson, Chisom stared blankly at her notes, the words blurring together. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong and that she had crossed a line she didn't even know existed. And though she didn't know it yet, the consequences of that afternoon would soon come knocking, reshaping the course of her young life. As the school day ended, the usual chatter of students filled the air. Groups of children lingered around the compound, talking and laughing as they waited for each other to head home. Chisom, however, slipped away quietly, clutching her school bag tightly. She didn't even wait for her friends, who called after her with confusion. "Chisom, wait for us," Oninia shouted, but Chisom didn't turn back. Her mind was heavy, clouded with thoughts she couldn't quite process. Her steps were slow, her head bent low as she walked the dusty path leading to her house. Usually, the journey home was lively for Chisom, filled with jokes and playful arguments with friends. But today, it was silent. The event in the bush replayed over and over in her mind. She felt a strange nagging discomfort in her chest that she couldn't shake off. By the time Chisom reached home, her mother, Mama Chisom, was in the backyard pounding yam for the evening meal. She paused when she saw her daughter walked past without her usual cheerful greeting. "Chisom, is that you?" her mother called out. "Yes, Mama," Chisom replied, her voice low. Mama Chisom wiped her hands on her wrapper and followed her daughter into the house. She found Chisom sitting on the edge of her small wooden bed, staring at the floor. Something was definitely wrong. "Chisom, what is it? Did something happen at school?" her mother asked, sitting beside her. "Nothing, Mama," Chisom muttered, avoiding her mother's gaze. Mama Chisom studied her daughter's face, noticing how dull and withdrawn she seemed. Chisom was usually full of energy, chatting about her day and helping with chores, but today she looked distant, almost like a shadow of herself. "Are you sure?" Mama Chisom pressed, concern etched on her face. "Yes, Mama," Chisom replied quickly, forcing a smile. "I'm just tired." Mama Chisom didn't believe her, but she decided not to push further. "All right, go and wash your hands. Food will soon be ready," she said, leaving the room reluctantly. That night, Chisom barely touched her food. She went to bed early, but sleep didn't come easily. Her thoughts were a whirlwind filled with guilt and confusion. She couldn't shake off the memory of Emeka's hands, his words, and how everything happened so quickly. 6 weeks later, the days turned into weeks and life went on. Chisom did her best to act normal, but something inside her had changed. She was quieter than usual, often lost in thoughts. Her friends noticed, but whenever they asked, she brushed them off with a forced smile. Then one morning, Chisom woke up feeling unusually weak. Her stomach turned, and before she could even sit up, she rushed outside to the backyard and vomited. Mama Chisom, who was sweeping the compound, rushed to her side. "Chisom, what's wrong with you?" she asked, holding her daughter's shoulder. "I don't know, Mama," Chisom said weakly. "I just feel weak. I feel sick." Mama Chisom helped her back inside and lay her on the bed. "Maybe it's malaria," she said, frowning. "You have been looking dull for some time now." Over the next few days, Chisholm's condition worsened. She lost her appetite and the morning vomiting continued. She became so weak that she could barely get out of bed. Mama Chisholm grew increasingly worried and decided it was time to take her to the health center in the nearby town. At the health center, the nurse asked Chisholm a series of questions while Mama Chisholm stood anxiously by her side. A blood sample was taken and they were asked to wait in the reception area. The minutes felt like hours as Mama Chisholm paced up and down, muttering prayers under her breath. Finally, the nurse returned, holding a small clipboard. Her expression was serious as she gestured for them to follow her into the doctor's office. Inside the doctor's office, a middle-aged man with kind eyes greeted them warmly. "Good afternoon, madam. Chisholm, how are you feeling now?" he asked. "Not well, doctor," Chisholm replied softly, her voice barely audible. The doctor sighed. Glancing at the results on his desk, he looked at Mama Chisholm, who was watching him intently. "Madam, the test shows that Chisholm is pregnant." The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Mama Chisholm's eyes widened in disbelief. "Pregnant? How? That's impossible. She's just a child," she exclaimed, her voice shaking. Chisholm's heart pounded as she stared at the floor, unable to meet her mother's eyes. Tears welled up in her eyes and her hands trembled in her lap. "Chisholm, is this true?" her mother demanded, turning to her. "Who is responsible for this?" Chisholm couldn't speak. Her throat felt dry and her body shook with silent sobs. The doctor cleared his throat gently. "Madam, I understand this is difficult to hear, but we need to focus on Chisholm's health right now. She needs proper care." But Mama Chisholm was too shocked to think clearly. "Chisholm, answer me. Who did this to you?" she shouted, her voice rising. Tears streamed down Chisholm's face as she whispered, It's Emeka." Mama Chisholm froze, her mind racing. Emeka, the boy who always came to the house with Chike. The one she thought was harmless. Without another word, Mama Chisholm grabbed her daughter's arm and pulled her out of the office. The journey home was silent, but Chisholm could feel the anger radiating from her mother. She knew there would be consequences, but she wasn't prepared for what was to come. As they entered the compound, Mama Chisholm called out to her husband, Papa Chisholm, who was sitting under the mango tree reading a newspaper. He looked up, surprised by the urgency in her voice. "Chisholm is pregnant," Mama Chisholm announced, her voice trembling with both anger and sadness. Papa Chisholm dropped the newspaper, his mouth falling open. "What? Pregnant? Oh, what are you saying?" She said, "It's that boy, Emeka," Mama Chisholm continued, her hands on her hips. "This is what happens when children play with things they don't understand." Chisholm stood by the doorway, tears streaming down her face. She felt small and helpless as her parents discussed her fate. She didn't know what to do or how to explain what had happened. "We need to call Emeka's parents," Papa Chisholm said finally, his voice heavy. "They need to know what their son has done." The news spread quickly in the village, and by evening, a meeting was arranged between the two families. Chisholm sat quietly in the corner, dreading what was to come. Emeka was brought in by his father, his face pale with fear. He avoided Chisholm's gaze, knowing the gravity of the situation. "What do we do now?" Mama Chisholm asked, her voice breaking. "Our children have made a mistake, but this is bigger than all of us." The room fell silent as everyone grappled with the reality of the situation. The future of the two young lives now hung in the balance, and the decision made that night would shape their destiny forever. The air in the village was heavy with whispers and judgments. Everyone seems to have something to say about Chisom and Emeka. The elders decided that the best solution was for Chisom to move in with Emeka's family until she gave birth. This decision was meant to bring peace between the two families. But for Chisom, it felt like a punishment she didn't deserve. When Mama Chisom told her the decision, Chisom broke down in tears. "Mama, please don't send me there," she begged, kneeling at her mother's feet. "I want to stay here with you." Mama Chisom wiped her own tears, her heart breaking for her daughter, but she felt helpless. "My daughter, this is not my decision. This is what the elders and your father agreed on. We have to respect their wishes," she said, pulling Chisom to a hug. That night, Chisom barely slept. She clung to her pillow, sobbing silently. The thought of leaving her home, her mother, and her siblings was unbearable. She couldn't imagine living with Emeka's family. Thank you so much for watching. Anticipate part 2 of this story. Subscribe to this channel so that you can get notified when we upload part 2. Like this video, share, and comment where you are watching from. Very, very important, guys. Where are you watching from? Write it in the comment section below. Thank you.